So you want to know the key differences between living in California and Texas? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today, and some of the points I'm going to talk about are going to surprise you. Welcome to the Living in Oakland, California channel. I'm Rich Fleming, your local realtor. I'm here to help you transition to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay. So if you got any questions, you know what to do, drop me a text, give me a call, send me an email, because when it comes to helping you relocate to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay, I got your back. Now in today's video, I'm going to cover some of the differences that exist between living in Texas and living in California. Now here's my disclaimer. I've never lived in Texas. Now I have visited many times, and I've visited most of the major metropolitan areas, Dallas, Fort Worth area, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. So I have a little bit of perspective as some of the things, but I have never actually lived there. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are not so much lifestyle, but are just more factual things that you can research for yourself and find out. So the 6 factors I'm going to compare Texas and California against are employment opportunities, weather, housing, congestion, access to healthcare, and taxes. So let's jump into that first factor, employment. Now, in a recent article on wallethub.com, they ranked Texas as the 19th best employment opportunity state, but California was ranked 23rd, so it wasn't that far behind. And if you look at the growth of GDP between the two states, California's GDP has actually been growing faster than Texas. So California's recent GDP growth was 8.1%, while Texas's was 6.9%. Both states have very diversified economies, and there are a lot of opportunities for just about any type of profession in both states. So which one truly has the better opportunities for employment? Well, I'm going to call this a toss-up. Both have pretty good employment prospects for their citizens. So the second factor we're going to look at is weather. Once again, both of these are very large states, and thus the weather is going to vary dramatically. But what I'm really going to focus on is the weather in the heavy population areas. So for California, that's going to be the greater Los Angeles, greater San Diego, greater Sacramento, and San Francisco areas. And for Texas, that's going to be the Dallas and Houston areas, Austin, and San Antonio. The biggest difference between the weather in Texas and California is what I will refer to as the extremes. So overall, in Texas, you're going to have colder weather in those heavily populated areas, and it may not be hotter in Texas in the summer, especially compared to Southern California, but you are definitely going to be in way more humidity, miserable humidity at times. So on this factor, I'm going to give it to California. It's really hard to beat the very mild, temperate, and non-humid weather in California. So the third factor we're going to talk about is housing. And once again, these are two huge states, so it's really hard to draw generalizations about housing. So I am going to compare two cities, two metropolitan areas, which are very comparable, Austin and San Jose. Now the median price for a home in Austin is $565,000, and that's up over 25% in the last year. But in San Jose, the median price for a home is $1.3 million, and that's up almost 20% in the last year. And the other factor to consider is for the same dollars spent, for example, you spent $1 million for a home in each city, what you will get for that $1 million is significantly more in Austin than it is in San Jose. So in this particular category, Texas wins hands down. And this is one of the driving forces attracting people to Texas from California. So the fourth factor, congestion, traffic. If you look at studies put out about traffic, congestion, so on and so forth, California always ranks as one of the most congested freeway systems, transportation systems overall. And this is especially true in the San Francisco area and the LA area. And that is the region that a vast number of people in California do live in. Now, don't get me wrong, Houston, Dallas, Even San Antonio, to an extent, can have some epic traffic. But when you're looking at the state overall, it's probably not nearly as bad in Texas traffic-wise as it is in California. So on this one, I give it to Texas. So the fifth factor I'm going to look at is healthcare. And I'm basing this segment on a study done by US News. And they looked at three components to healthcare: your access to healthcare, the quality of healthcare, and how strong is the public health system. And when ranking these three components, California came out as having the fifth best healthcare system in the country, while Texas came in at 31st. So on this factor, it clearly falls in California's column. So the sixth factor I'm going to talk about is taxes, and this one's going to surprise a lot of people because there's so much in the news about California's high income tax rates and that Texas does not have an income tax, and Elon Musk relocating and moving to Texas and other business people moving to Texas. But the truth about this one is going to be a little bit surprising. So let's jump into it. So what is the overall effective tax rate in these two cities? And notice I said effective tax rate. And that is a very important distinction to note. Effective tax rate is what really comes out of your pocket as opposed to what is written on paper. And this is key because in California, the written on paper nominal tax rate that is often used is somewhere around 13%. But the effective tax rate, after all the deductions and all the rest of that stuff, the effective tax rate that most people pay on average in California is less than 2%. So that's 2% more than Texas's income tax rate, but it isn't nearly as bad as it often is promoted. The property tax rate in California, on the whole, it varies throughout the state, is about 2.6%. The vehicle property tax rate is about 0.25%, and the sales tax is about 4.75%. Now, granted, this can vary dramatically throughout the state of California. Now, in Texas, they don't have a vehicle property tax and they don't have income tax, but they do have a sales tax. And the effective sales tax on the whole in the state is 6.6%. And the Texas property tax rate on the whole is about 6.18%. And in addition to that, in a lot of newer communities in Texas, there are many development fees. So you've got to add that on to your expense too. So when you look at the effective tax rates between the two states, adding up all the different types of taxes, California's effective tax rate is about 8.9%, while Texas's effective tax rate, considering everything, is about 12.8%. So that actually means the effective tax rate is higher in Texas than it is California. And according to Wallet Hub, which did this study, the effective tax rate in Texas is the 11th highest in the country, while California's effective tax rate is actually 39th in the country. So what does all this tax information mean? Well, if you're Elon Musk and you have had a net worth gain of $200 billion in the last year, and he doesn't get taxed on all of that for a whole bunch of reasons, but it's still a lot. It makes a lot of sense to move to a state without income tax, because in California, if you earn more than about $400,000 or $500,000 a year, you are heavily taxed. But if you are under that amount, the effective tax rate, the actual taxes you pay, not what's written on paper, is significantly less than is often portrayed. If you're a middle-class family or single individual, the tax rate overall you pay for everything is going to be higher in Texas than it is going to be in California. Now, the real key in the actual dollars spent, especially related to property taxes, is the cost of housing is so much higher in California, you end up paying more dollars in tax. But as a percentage, you will pay a significantly higher percentage in taxes for property in Texas. So if you want to know more about the cost of living in the Bay Area, specifically Oakland, California, well, check out this video that I did earlier. If you have any questions, drop me a text, send me an email, give me a call, because when it comes to helping you transition to Oakland and the rest of the San Francisco East Bay, I got your back. Hit the thumbs up button if you like the video so YouTube knows to show it to other people with interests similar to yourself. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you know each and every time I drop a new video, and I'll catch you in the next video.